going to read from Isaiah chapter 6, famous passage. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim, each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So I said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth with it, and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is taken away, and your sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. I wonder if you can remember where you were at the time that the planes went into the Twin Towers on 9/11. Or perhaps it might be when you heard of the death of Princess Diana. Or if you're an older person, perhaps it was the death of the King. We do have a tendency, don't we, to remember significant events and to perhaps remember what we were doing. And I'm sure all of us are going to remember this year, 2020, as the year of the coronavirus. Significant events have a way of kind of coming into our psyche, and we remember them. Our reading this afternoon from Isaiah gives us another example of a significant event. When Isaiah saw the Lord, he remembered when it was. He linked it, if you like, to the death of King Uzziah. Now that's quite a significant thing. Isaiah may not have thought that much about it. He may have just thought, oh yeah, I remember when that happened because it was the same year that the king died. But perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that it was in the year that the king died that Isaiah saw the Lord. This was, if you like, the beginning of his ministry in many ways, the beginning of his useful service to the Lord. But it was only when the king had died, it was only when the king had gone, that Isaiah could be used by God. Perhaps it was the splendour of the royal palace, perhaps it was just that Isaiah was so dedicated to the king that he had no time for God. Sometimes in our lives, it's only when certain things are removed that we can truly see God and perhaps become receptive to him. Sometimes there might be people in our lives that really stop us seeing God. It might be a job, it might be a hobby, it could be anything. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, is what Isaiah said. And that's a very significant thing. Sometimes we have these situations and we have to say, is it worth it? The things that prevent us from seeing God, are they worth it? Are they the things that we should be following? And the question is this: was Isaiah better or worse off when he saw the Lord, when he woke up to God? Well, clearly, in terms of what the Bible says, Isaiah's life really began. His life of service began at this point. He was clearly much better off following the Lord than he was simply being a servant to the king. And sometimes it takes something significant to wake us up to God. Sometimes we need those things removing if we are to see God as he truly is. There's a hymn I like, it says, "Sky above is softer blue, grass beneath is sweeter green, something lives in every hue, Christless eyes have never seen." And I wonder this evening whether that's something that is true to your situation. Perhaps you have no time for God because of other things in your life. And I ask the question, is it worth it? Isaiah saw his vulnerability, perhaps. The thing that was his rock in his life was suddenly taken away, and he saw that he was vulnerable. He had nothing else, and in that vulnerability he turned to God. And there's an interesting thing when Isaiah said he saw the Lord high and lifted up. There's an interesting thing that when this happened to him, Isaiah said this, "Woe is me, for I am undone," he said, "for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among a people of unclean lips." Even the company that he was keeping, he knew wasn't right. You see, God didn't have to tell Isaiah he was a sinner. He knew it all along. And when he saw the holiness of God, he knew that he was a sinner. It's like when Peter saw the miracle of the fish. He came up to Jesus and he said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinner." And it's an interesting thing that when people come and see God for who he is, you never have to tell them that they're a sinner. Because each one of us knows that there are things in our lives that we do wrong, things that are not right, things that need to be put right. And we can see God through his word, and his word tells us that we are sinners, that we have fallen short of the glory of God. Isaiah saw God and he knew he couldn't face him. He said, "I am undone. I can't face that holy God." And none of us can come before God's presence as we are because of those things that we do that are wrong in our lives. But here's the thing, his problem was resolved when God spoke to him of a divine provision. There was nothing that Isaiah could do to make himself clean. God had to do it for him. And this is an interesting thing, that one of the seraphims took a coal from the altar, from the fire. It would have been burning hot, and if you can imagine such a thing coming to Isaiah's lips. But this was the thing that was going to cleanse him. It was going to be painful, it was going to hurt Isaiah, but it was the thing that was needed to take away his iniquity. And God takes Jesus from the fire of Calvary, and he applies him to our lives, and he says, "It is enough. It is enough. This has taken away your iniquity." That's what Isaiah was told. Your lips have been purged of the things that you've done wrong. It hurt him. It had a price. To Isaiah, it also had a price for Christ to die for us. But he offers us that forgiveness completely free. But for Isaiah, there was pain. And you know, when we accept Christ into our lives and we see God as he is, sometimes there will be pain because there will be things that we can no longer do. There are things that we will have to move away from. There are perhaps relationships that we will need to give up. It might even be a job that isn't the right thing for us to do anymore. There may be a cost. It cost Isaiah. It was painful. And sometimes, you know, there is a cost to becoming a Christian. But Jesus said a very important thing in the Gospel of Luke. He said this. Whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build but was not able to finish. Or what king, going to make war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. There is a cost, and we have to count the cost of following God. There is a judgment coming. And just as Isaiah, when he saw the Lord, had his sin taken away by that live coal from the altar, so Christ can take away your sin and my sin through his death upon the cross. I hope that this evening you will really think about the things that are happening around us, and perhaps it will be for you, in the year of COVID-19, I saw the Lord. I do hope so. Thank you for listening.